Hey, what's up YouTube? I am out here at the creek with another knife review for you. Today I have the Lengren Dragon. Here is a closer look at this knife. So as you can see, it has full tang construction and it is 6 millimeters thick. The handle scales have a lot of texture. They are micarta. It comes in this color, which they call khaki. I would call it kind of like I just call it brown. And they also have black handle scales available. It has a true full tang and an extended tang with a lanyard hole there. Right? And they call this their window breaker pommel. Now you might wonder, what's all this stuff up there? What's those notches there? That's for if you want to hold it like this for various, various tasks. So just very specialized grips. But, some people would prefer that just to be flat. It has an integrated guard, as you can see. Now I have a large size hand, so this is how it fits a large size hand. If you had like really big hands, it would still fit you, but it would be a little closer. It's got a little mini fuller there, a ricasso right there, and it's a partial flat grind with a high bevel there. So this knife has a secondary grind right near the tip. You see that? So what that does is it allows them to maintain the thickness of this knife almost right to the end, and then that grind comes in to just make this more thin and pointed right at the very end, but it allows them to maintain the thickness almost to the end, right? So in a way it makes it like a lot stronger up to that bevel. Now I weighed this when I was at home. This weighs exactly 15.22 ounces. Alright, you see that square there? That's where I usually test my fire steel, but the waters have risen a little too much, so let's find a different one. Alright, well that was fast. There you go. So the spine of this can absolutely strike a fire steel very efficiently. Alright, cutting a few mundane items. I've got some paracord here. No problem. Got a strap. Again, no problem. Piece of a box. There you go. Now YouTube, I had someone accuse me or ask me if I pick up my litter. So of course I immediately blocked this idiot, right? He asked me if I pick up my litter. Well, fucking obviously. You see me at the creek in video after video. Why on earth would I want garbage to pile up in my own spot? It just doesn't even make any sense. Alright, so I blocked that person because I just don't do this whole Karen thing, right? That person's a Karen. And the video it was on, it was a perfectly friendly video. You know my videos, upbeat, informative, entertaining, joking around. There was absolutely no reason for the person to suspect or to assume the worst of me. He just wanted to because he was a petty, just thoughtless idiot. And that's the reality today of America, which has become a bunch of Karens. So if you're against that ridiculousness, give me a thumbs up. How about a thumbs up for all the decent, sociable people that are not neurotic and crazy, right? And trying to sucker punch a gear reviewer like me when I'm the guy that picks up all the stuff. Here is a look at the sheath that this came with. It's got eyelets all around there. It is a molded synthetic sheath. It has this strap with a buckle, which is a tie down. It's got that belt loop, and it has a drainage hole right there. Now it is a little tight, right? It is a little bit tight in the sheath, so you might have to break it in. But that's the sheath. Now the steel on this is Sleipner steel. If you're not familiar with that, it's actually a super tool steel with very superior toughness, especially compared to D2. It's like a super D2 on steroids, right? So it's a super tough tool steel. So this is actually 61 HRC. What that means is it's going to have superior edge retention. Yeah, so I hope you're all doing well these days. I'm getting out here. It's my idea of fun. There's no one out here except the geese. Geese, ducks, bugs, me. Now this kiln-dried wood is a little bit harder than a branch you would get out here. It's because most of the moisture has been removed from it. But nonetheless, we can carve it. Nice. Yet another spike in no time at all. This is actually old school. This is like old school combat knife. And a lot of people are carrying maybe 5 to 5.5 inch blade knives instead, or they're just carrying a multi-tool. It really depends on their specialty. But if you are one of the people in the military that is still carrying what would be considered a full-sized fixed blade, yeah, this might be for you. I mean, this is meant to kind of survive the end of the world, so to speak. Now here's a comparison with some other knives. So this is the Lengren Rhino. I have already reviewed this knife, and they have a Tonto version called the Hippo. And this is the Dragon, and that is the EAFENGROW 141, which I have already reviewed. Now, some people have pointed out the similarities between the Dragon and that EAFENGROW that I reviewed. You know, what it comes down to is that there's one factory that probably makes all of these, right? I think these were all made in the same factory. 15 years ago, you know, you would have like Bud K, little, not even full tang, you know, stuff that would just snap off, ABS handles. They've gone from that to like Sleipner steel, micarta, 6mm thick. I mean, this is marked improvement in the market. Now, you might not have heard of Lengren because it's a relatively new brand, but trust me, I probably subscribe to a lot more knife reviewers than you do, so this brand has actually been reviewed extensively by many people I know. So it might be new to you, but if you look around, there are actually a lot of reviews of Lengren knives, so it's not going to be new for long. So now it is an expensive knife, right? It is an expensive knife, so if that's the hang-up, I understand. I mean, yeah, everybody has a certain budget they must stick to. Alright, I'm going to baton a squared off notch into this piece of firewood. People seem to like a little notching. Alright, first groove. There we go. It's already kind of doing itself. Alright, so just remove that piece from the center there and clean it up a little bit between those two grooves. And in no time at all, we got a nice squared off notch. Alright, so that's one more use of this knife. Yeah, so I think this was intended as an old school military fixed blade. However, you can use it out in the bush, you can use it as a camp knife. It's pretty big and heavy for a camp knife. This is what you carry if you expect to do a little bit of chopping as well as the other camp duties. Alright, I'm going to carve a tip onto this. Doing well. Hope you're all doing well these days. I'm keeping busy. Okay, so y'all see what we're doing here? We're just chipping away and we're gonna make this pointed, right? The same way you would use, I would usually use like a camp hatchet for this, but, and then we're gonna smooth it out. All right. You hear those, I don't know if you hear the birds. All right, so, you know, we got the basic shape and then we just got to smooth this out. All right, we're getting there, we're getting there. Yeah, we're making some progress. Alright, YouTube, I got this spike. We literally got some wildlife floating by in the background. Alright. Yeah, honk. But moral of the story, you can chip carve with this, and then you can also smooth out whatever you carve. If you have to carve, like carve yourself a little tent stake or something, or some sort of Rambo like wooden spearhead. So check this out, YouTube. My old baton finally broke, cracked in half. Rest in peace, old baton. I've had that for years. Luckily, I have a new baton that I carved. I actually have a lot of these. I just carved them for fun. Okay, we're gonna do some splitting with a dragon. Sorry for any wind noise. We actually have a storm rolling in. Most of these pieces of wood have knots in them. They're all twisty, but I guess that's just a better test. All right, here we go. Nice. Right through the knot. You see that knot there? Right through. There we go. Alright, so all that wood there on the splitting stump, alright, all this wood here, that was all split using the dragon. Alright? And my trusty caveman club. And it didn't take long at all. Now you're probably wondering, well, how did it hold up? It held up fine. I don't know if you can see, but there's a little bit of bark stain, but there's absolutely no chipping and no rolling on that edge. I don't know if you can see with the lighting here, but trust me, the edge held up fine. Alright, the edge held up fine. Alright, this is a beast. Now I don't use a knife for splitting. I would use a splitting froe, right? Or just a splitting axe. Alright, but this is just to show you that this thing can take some use and some abuse. Yeah, this dragon knife, it took all the punishment that my caveman baton can dish out. And rest assured, this thing is heavy. This thing is heavy and hits hard. Alright, let me tell you a story. few years ago, my mom was over here for around Christmas time, you know, and she knows I do wood carving. She saw this. She thought this was supposed to be a wine bottle. She thought it was supposed to be a carving of a wine bottle. You see that, right? I said, no, that's a club. And so she picks it up and she's like, oh, that's heavy. I suppose it is dangerous if you get in the way of it, but don't get in the way of it and you're perfectly safe. But anyway, yeah, that's my bushcraft wine bottle carving, definitely. This thing can solve a lot of problems that only force can solve. I like this brand. I like where they're going. You know, they don't fool around. 6mm thick. Now, one thing you should know about these knives, I've been told that these are actually the poor man's version of some much more expensive knives. And now I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, wait a minute, if that knife is $126, how much is the real knife? Well, these are similar to Miller Brothers knives, which are about $500 or more, right? So if you are financially blessed, by all means, buy yourself a Miller Brothers knife or a Bussey knife, you know, knives like that. But for most people, you know, a $500 fixed blade is out of reach for most people, right? So these are poor man's versions, quote unquote poor man's versions, of much more expensive custom or semi-custom knives. This is kind of where fixed blades are going, overbuilt knives. If you've seen like my reviews of off-grid knives, they do the same thing, overbuilt knives. People just feel like they're getting more for their dollars when you got a thick, heavy knife, even if this is a bit bigger and heavier than you would normally carry for bushcraft, right? Well, I think it's obvious they wanted to give you a very overbuilt beast knife, right? This knife is not trying to compete with my Mora knives that I use for bushcraft, not at all. This is a whole different beast, right? This is kind of a end of the world knife, or, you know, full-size military combat fixed blade. A lot of people might not need a knife in that category. I understand that, but for its category, it's actually pretty awesome. And I gotta say, if Cold Steel had made this exact same knife, you know, and cut up a few pig carcasses with it and stuff like that, people would be going crazy. They'd be buying 2 or 3. They'd say it's the greatest knife ever, right? So you have to realize sometimes you guys do pay for a name. I love Cold Steel just as much as you know, but I'm just saying, if you know, or if let's say K-Bar had made this knife, again, people would be raving and paying $200 for it. So I like this knife, and I like what Lengren is doing. I like the direction that they are going, definitely.